What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Arrow Season 8, Episode 1, Starling City. So we finally reached the last of these CW shows for now, because for some reason Legends of Tomorrow doesn't start until after the crisis. So, until then, we've just got these 4 CW shows. And this is the one that I'm the most curious about, because honestly, I mean, Arrows, for me, has not really been enjoyable since, like, Season 2. So it's really been frustrating to watch as the show has made dumb decision after dumb decision. Some of the characters becoming more and more stupid throughout the years. But, I mean, it's the last season, and there is a lot of, I guess, I don't know if hype is the right word, but there is a lot of weight to this final season because it does seem like this is going to be the death of Oliver because it's the last season of Arrow. You know, for The Flash, they still have more seasons after this one, or the one that I'm currently watching, and obviously it's continued on after, so there is kind of a feeling of, okay, well, they're saying Barry's going to die, but he's probably not going to, or they're going to find some way around it. But this is the last season of Arrow, so very likely Oliver is going to die, and unfortunately I have been spoiled on the fact that, I mean, there's at least a grave, because they showed it last season, which also felt like a spoiler, but also I've seen the meme of Grant Gustin in front of Oliver Queen's grave giving the peace sign. So I know at some point they are going to have Oliver die. I don't know if that's going to be the end of it or if there's going to be something else that happens, but we have pretty much a very similar setup to The Flash right now in that it's basically Oliver knows he's going to die and he's just accepted it, but then Diggle is like, no, we're not just going to let you die. So I don't know, it's kind of weird that we've got 2 shows in the same TV universe, 2 separate shows that are basically kind of doing the same story, that the main character is going to die, and their character saying, no, we're not going to let that happen, even though this monitor guy is like, no, this is going to happen. So I feel a little weirded out by the fact that they're just doing that. But I guess we'll see how they handle it. This one, I assumed it was something like Barry was supposed to die and then Oliver would take his place, but it sounds like Barry and Oliver both have to die for this to work. So I don't really understand why, and I still don't really understand what the crisis is, but we do get our first glimpse of it in this episode, because while they're at Earth 2, we see at the very end of it like the crisis, whatever it is apparently attacking that Earth for whatever reason. I don't know why it's attacking some Earths and not others, or if it's I don't know how it picks and chooses what Earth, because this is Earth 2, technically, based on I guess, the universe where we've been watching is Earth 1. There's like a bunch of different Earths, and so this seems like, okay, if it's attacking Earth 2, then Earth 1 should be next, but that would mean that it would be going down the line, right? Because Jay Garrick's Earth is still fine, and Supergirl's Earth is still fine, and Batwoman's Earth is still fine, so I don't know, it seems weird that it's just like, alright, Earth 2 is now gone and attacked by the crisis, oh no. But no sign of really what it is. I mean, it's just basically the world is like crumbling, there's like this red aura, and then people are turning to dust, so more Marvel references, you know? I don't understand why they're pulling so much from Marvel in these shows. I don't understand. I mean, you've already got the storyline of, oh, I saw all of these futures and there was only one where we succeeded and I have to die. And then you've got another one that's like, oh, well, how does this crisis work? Well, it attacks the Earth and then it's almost like somebody snapped and then they're just turning to dust. Ooh, spooky. Again, it just pulls me out of it. I don't understand why they do this. I don't understand how you can... I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to have all these people die because of the crisis, do it. You know, show it to us. But to have them just turn to dust, you have to know that people are going to look at that and say, oh, what, did Thanos snap? Like, that's what people are going to think of. When you do the storyline of Barry seeing all the timelines, people are going to think of Doctor Strange seeing all the timelines and seeing only one succeed. When you have a black gooey substance coming out of a guy, people are going to think of Venom. When you have a girl who can shoot webs, people are going to think of Spider-Gwen. Like, a blonde, no less. So I'm just like, I don't understand why they're doing this. But anyways, taking focus away from that, As far as the story is in this episode, it was kind of interesting. The future stuff I'll get to, but as far as what Oliver and Diggle were going through in this episode, I actually enjoyed it because it was interesting to see another Earth and basically where everybody would be if Oliver had never come back. If he had, I guess, the Oliver of this universe did die out at sea with his dad. So to see what this world is like, Thea overdosing on vertigo because of that depression, Tommy becoming the was it the Dark Archer, the Black Archer? I think it's the Dark Archer, but essentially still having the same plan as his father, but with different reasoning because he just wanted to see the Glades burn because of what happened to Thea, because he felt like it was essentially the city that took so much from her, and all of the darkness and evilness in the city is what took her away from him, and so he just wants to see it burn because of it. Seeing apparently Renee and Dinah are working with Tommy. On top of that, the funniest thing in this episode, shockingly enough, is Adrian Chase became the Hood in this universe. And at first I didn't recognize him because he had like a full beard, and I don't know, just something about seeing somebody that normally is so clean shaven and then you see him with a beard, it is different and it's hard to immediately tell who it is. So whenever he's like Adrian Chase, I'm like, what? That's Adrian Chase? But I don't know, it was kind of funny to see their little back and forth and to see what type of Arrow that Adrian Chase would have been if he hadn't been so corrupted. I mean, it was pretty well done. So I really did like them spending time in this other Earth and Oliver getting to interact with his mom and Merlin. The only thing I will say is I feel like the Crisis attacking that Earth does sort of ruin a couple storylines that I was really wondering if they were going to explore it all. Because what was going to happen in this world now? Oliver came back. They probably made a bunch of news announcements. It seemed like everybody was happy to have him back. It changed Tommy and who he is. And then he just leaves and goes back to his actual Earth. What would happen on that world? Like, what would people think? Like, Oliver just left again? He just disappeared again? Like, what would that do to the people? But then, of course, the Crisis attacks, and then they all just fade to dust, and I'm just like, okay, well, that storyline just going nowhere. So I feel like that was a little bit of waste of potential, but also I feel like it would detract from our main story this season, which is, of course, building up to the Crisis, because out of all of the shows, this is definitely the one that is going to be the most affected by the Crisis, because it ends basically right after. It goes from, the Crisis is, I think, episode 8, and then there's only 10 episodes, so there's like 2 conclusion episodes, I guess, to see what happens after all is said and done. So this one, I feel like, is definitely, and I mean, we even saw the Monitor. He was directly involved with what Oliver was doing. He was telling him, you need to go get this dwarf star from Earth 2. Whereas the Flash, he did show up and talk to him, but it's not like he's telling the Flash, here's what you have to do to prepare for what we need to do to accomplish our goals and eventually save the day. So I'll really be interested to see what they do with Arrow's story for this season. As far as the future stuff, though, this is where I'm kind of just not on board. Because, again, you're showing us a lot of what is to come. And I feel like there are going to be moments throughout the season where they do spoil some of what is happening in the present. And I just feel like the only reason they're doing this is, I don't know, because they started it last season. They wanted to show Felicity after all of the future stuff is said and done, what she does, going to see Oliver, whatever that means. So I feel like that's why they had the future scenes in the last season. And it's almost like they didn't want to just stop there. So like, I know, let's just keep telling the story of this new Team Arrow with Mia and William and Zoe and Diggle's son, whose name escapes me. But apparently his other son, JJ, is running the Deathstrokes. So it's almost weird how history kind of repeats itself there, with one Diggle brother being a part of the Deathstrokes and the other one working with Team Arrow. Very, very weird how that happened. But I don't know if they were just hoping to like, oh, what if we set up this and then we had another series with the new Team Arrow. Ooh, we could set that up for the future. And I don't, first of all, that hasn't happened, obviously. But I'm just not as interested in this group because they're not really that interesting. If I'm being honest, like, they're not written very interesting. So I feel like you've not really done a good job of giving me a reason to be involved in this future. And on top of that, the fact that Mia is still just kind of a little prick. So she wants to do everything her own way. And what's funny about that is that's kind of the conflict they showed earlier on, where she goes and does her own thing and then things get messed up. And then they get to the final battle, and Diggle's son that's not evil, whose name I'll have to try to remember for the next review, he like doesn't really give any orders, but she like goes in to help, and then JJ like kind of attacks her and then jumps out the window while Diggle's other son is just watching. For some reason, like, he doesn't try to do anything. He's like, sorry, I underestimated him. And then she's just like, yeah, we're gonna do things my way now. It's like, okay, so what was the point of all of this? Did you even try to follow his orders? Because it seemed like there wasn't really anything to follow, and then all of a sudden you're just like, your way didn't work. What was his way? He took out some of the guards, you took out one, and then nothing happened. I don't really understand what the plan was there. I don't know. It was just, again, I'm not really engaged with the future scenes. They're just sort of happening, and they're not interesting. So, but anyways, that's it for this first episode. On to the second one. And now, episode 2, Welcome to Hong Kong. Don't really know what to think right now, honestly. It's not bad. There's some good parts. The future stuff is still just kind of dumb to me, because we got kind of the same old, oh, I think you're a good person deep down. No, I'm not. I'm just evil. You don't understand. I've always been this way. You can't change me. That whole thing between the Diggle brothers. Mia is still just kind of like, I want to do my own thing, and you need to figure yourself out, and you need to not trust your brother so much, but then she'll still act sympathetic at weird times. Like, just randomly when they're in that club. Oh, you blame yourself, don't you? It's not your fault, though. Like, she never showed any care towards Connor and his brother. Which, yes, I do remember his name now. But she didn't show any care for him at all in the last episode or this one. And then just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in the club, suddenly she's like having a heart-to-heart with him about not blaming himself for how his brother turned out. Where did this come from? You're not sympathetic or caring. This is not Mia. What are you doing? So, but yeah, I don't know. I still don't get why we're seeing the future stuff, and it's still just not that interesting, so still where I am with it. But as far as Oliver's stuff, so first of all, I did talk about how I felt like it was a missed opportunity not to deal with, Oliver coming back into the lives of the people on Earth 2 and then just killing them off, instead of exploring what that would mean, that he just suddenly disappears and goes back to his Earth. But what it does raise is a very interesting story for Laurel to deal with, which she does sort of overcome it in this episode, but still maybe something to discuss later on down the line, because she doesn't have a home to go back to now. Her Earth was destroyed. And that's, I don't know, kind of an emotional thing to discuss. And she and Lila have a nice talk about it, where, Lila says, yeah, I don't know what that's like, but I do understand survivor's guilt. And you can't, it doesn't just go away. Like, you can't just live with it, though. You can't carry all of that on your shoulders and feel like you're the one responsible. Like, you do have to move on. It's not easy. So I like the fact that they managed to make a comparison there, because there was a part of me that was like, oh, please don't tell me she's going to be like, oh, I actually do know some of what you're going through. But based on her story, I did like that little connection of like, well, I don't necessarily understand what it means to lose everything, but I understand that feeling of, why am I still alive when the people I cared about are dead? So that was a nice moment, and it does leave some room for Laurel this season to sort of grow, and that, if they can't get Earth 2 back, that is kind of something for her to focus on, of like having to grow accustomed to this new world, which she's already been a part of Earth 1 for a little bit. So there is kind of a, I don't know, it's not like she's been on Earth 2 for her whole life, and then suddenly they're just like, all right, now come to our Earth. And it's just this new world to live in with all these different people. Like, she's already had experiences with them. So it's not entirely out of the question. But it does bring a good story for her for this season. And as far as Oliver's concerned, we do see Katana comes into the show, and as always, because Suicide Squad described it so perfectly, she's got Oliver's back. Just kidding. This Katana is way much more interesting, and we know a lot more about her aside from just having people's backs. But she comes back into it, and she does raise some very good questions for Oliver. Do you trust the Monitor? And that's what's got me really confused as to what this season is going to be about, because now they are sort of showing the Monitor in a very villainous sort of aura, I guess, because he showed at the beginning of this episode, it really starts to feel like he's more pushing Oliver into this. He's like, you saved Laurel's life, you interfered, you stopped Tommy Merlin's plans, you interfered with that world, that was not part of the plan. And yes, there is a feeling of there is obviously this impending crisis, and Oliver does need to do all this stuff apparently to stop it. But at the same time, the way he's going about it is very forceful, and it does feel very much like kind of a villain. So when Katana started bringing up these questions of like, do you trust him? Do you know everything? And Oliver has to admit no. It does make me question if he is going to be a good guy in all of this. Because he's telling Barry and Oliver that they have to sacrifice themselves to stop the crisis. How do we know that's true? Barry, obviously, he saw the futures and saw there was only one, that he died, and that's how everybody was saved. But as far as the Monitor is concerned, how do we know we can trust him in all of this? How do we know he's not actually working for whoever's behind the crisis or is going to be the causer of the crisis? I mean, when he shows up and talks to Lila at the end of this episode, it sounds like he actually somehow gave up Earth 2 as part of the plan. So I don't know if he made a deal with whoever's behind the crisis, like, here, have this Earth and just let me have time to set this up. I don't know. It's got my interest peaked, though. And it's something that I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how they're going to handle this story for this season. Are we going to see Oliver push back against whatever the Monitor has in plan? Or are we actually going to see that, no, he's being forceful because this is the only outcome that he foresees as a possibility of winning the fight, is if Oliver follows all of his instructions. But yeah, it's been quite an interesting watch so far over these first two episodes. I mean, I wasn't really sure what to expect, with it being the final season. Kind of expected some good callbacks, and sure enough, we've already seen Malcolm and Tommy and Moira all part of the first episode. Now Katana's back in the second episode. So it's nice to see, and also, what's her name? China White, I think is her name. We saw her back as well, so a nice recurring villain. So it's been fun to see already they're bringing some people back, and I kind of figured we would see a lot of this. So no doubt probably going to see Slade again at some point. Adrian Chase made his return as well. Maybe we'll see Damien Dark somehow on another Earth. I don't know. But, I mean, so far, good first two episodes. I guess we'll see what's to come. I will, I guess, quickly talk about Lila as well in this episode, because I don't really know how I feel about her working with the Monitor, just because it kind of, I don't know. I mean, I know she's done stuff before that John didn't necessarily like because she felt like it was for the greater good. So I guess it's possible that the Monitor came to her and basically said, hey, we need somebody to sort of keep an eye on Oliver and make sure he's doing what he needs to do, following my instructions, because this is the only way that will save the multiverse. And if that's the case, then maybe that's what Lila is thinking when she's doing this, and she's helping him behind John and Oliver's back. But I don't know, it still feels kind of like, really, Lila? You're just gonna betray them basically and not ask too many questions? But again, I mean, I guess out of all of them, the head of the secretive organization that's willing to do the dirty work to get things done, I guess she would be the one that you would turn to and say, hey, this is what I need from you. So maybe that's part of the plan there. But yeah, all in all, good first two episodes. I'm doing this a little differently than the others because There's 8 episodes leading up to the crisis in those other shows and 7 here. So instead of going 3-3-2, I'm going to go 2-3-2 for this one, just because it makes sense to me. So that's it for these first 2 episodes. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these first 2? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Arrow reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.